Hello YouTube, Jonathan800 here. So today I'm going to be doing something a little different compared to what I did last week, and this is going to be a suggestion I posted on the Paradox forums, and I would like to know what your thoughts are on it. Currently, the Great Depression is just a set of debuffs to America's political power and resource gain, recruitable population and consumer goods factor, and when they can join a faction. The US also has undisturbed isolation, which is basically just 15% worse civilian economy with a few more debuffs, which can be solved by doing limited intervention, the giant wakes, or being at war. The current way the depression is able to be lessened and removed is by doing 3 70-day focuses that are timed 230 days apart from each other, which removes 1/3 of the depression. The focuses in the current order are Agricultural Adjustment Act, originally 1933 but expanded in 1938, Fair Labor Standards Act, 1938, and Federal Housing Act, 1937 if it was the United States Housing Act of 1937. The Great Depression and undisturbed isolation can be removed if the United States finds itself at war with a major, which is often achieved by breaking the Naval Treaty. There is also not much interaction in removing the Great Depression aside from needing to get Congress to side with you. Another aspect is, aside from the extremely high consumer goods, there is really nothing penalizing you from building a ton of military factories and special research facilities to your heart's content. This often leads to a playstyle of just building infrastructure to research facility and mills, not really helping out the people in need or the economy, right? Early game as a whole is also just not all that eventful. You just do some focuses, sometimes look at the decision screen to lobby Congress, and every 4 years you get to do one event for the election. Here's what I think could be done instead to help make America play more historically accurate. So, to start with is a change to the Great Depression spirit. The Great Depression should, on top of what it has, give a penalty to stability, monthly population growth, and ideology drift defense, because people in desperate times may turn to desperate measures. I also believe there should be a penalty to military research, minus 10% to armored artillery, air, and naval research, as Congress would be more inclined to spend funds on the economy and industry rather than figuring out how to make better weapons. Infantry equipment is not included as the M1 Thompson, 1939 tech, was made in 1921 and the M1 Garand was beginning production in 1936. The research penalties could be removed by doing focuses like 2 Ocean Navy Act and similar. I believe that the Great Depression should be removed based on how much infrastructure and civilian factories were constructed with the Great Depression New Deal focuses giving goals to meet and thereby lower the penalties of disparity per goal met. The first focus to help out should be Continue the New Deal, which modifies a New Deal national spirit at the game's start that boosts infrastructure and civilian factory construction speed, along with stability. I'll later talk about the re-establish the gold standard path later. After Continue the New Deal, the next focus would be Utilize the WPA, which would provide decisions/goals to meet of a certain number of newly constructed civilian factories across all states. This would in return reduce the consumer goods, stability, and ideology drift defense penalties of the Depression. This will replace the Federal Housing Act focus, as all the United States Housing Act did was build new houses and destroyed old houses according to Wikipedia. Next would be expand the AAA, which would have players build infrastructure in the Great Plains and the West. This would help gradually remove the penalties to stability, ideology drift defense, and recruitable population factor, and population growth when goals are met. The final focus of Fair Labor Standards Act would simply grant a stability bonus to the New Deal national spirit and lower the stability and ideology drift defense penalty. Since it involved improving the workplace, it could increase factory and dockyard output by like 5% or something. I do not think there should be a 230-day gap between the focuses, especially since both the Expanded Agricultural Adjustment Act and Fair Labor Standards Act were both done in 1938. Maybe make it a 140-day gap so it also lines up with the focuses better. If the United States were to go to war with the Great Depression spirit, I think it would lower, but not completely remove the consumer goods factor and reduce the penalties to recruitable population factor. But there is still the Dust Bowl and other issues on the home front resulting in the stability, ideology drift defense, population growth factor, and negative military research speeds still existing. Though at war, the focus is to fix the penalties to military research speed would be easier to meet. The economic law for undisturbed isolation would remain as is or be replaced with civilian economy, and the Great Depression national spirit takes over the negatives of it. However, I think there should be a national spirit relating to the overall sentiment for neutrality in the United States. This could be a national spirit with the America First Committee as its icon or something, that grants negative war support, greatly increase the cost of, or preventing, guaranteeing of any country not in the Americas, and more war support loss from combat casualties, but in return you get positive stability. The Neutrality Act branch would focus on giving more stability and industry bonuses from this spirit, while the Limited Intervention branch would shift the spirit to having more war support and combat bonuses, giving more of a reason to go down this path, with negative stability and higher costs to mobilizing the economy and population. When an offensive war against non-majors happened, if the U.S. went down Neutrality Act, the stability bonuses would be replaced with a penalty instead. Wars against majors would not have this issue, and if in a defensive war, the war support penalties would be removed altogether. When it comes to getting off undisturbed isolation, I think that it could go to civilian economy, but I would almost suggest preventing going above civilian economy until the U.S. is at war with a major power. Then an event can pop up giving the U.S. total mobilization and large bonuses to converting civilian factories to military factories. Maybe add in a production efficiency growth and base bonus to account for the U.S. being unable to build up their military industry early compared to other powers. I still think war support should still be able to be increased via the Aid Britain decisions. I also think that the industry tree under Neutrality Act should be shared with Limited Intervention, but Neutrality Act gets the current bonuses while Limited Intervention gets a lessened version of the focuses. This is all well and good for sticking with FDR, but what about other paths? The first mutually exclusive focuses of continue the New Deal and reestablish the gold standard can work, but let's replace gold standard with form the conservative coalition, which can also be picked at game start. This is where the conservative members of Congress unite as they did in our timeline, but a year earlier. There should also be a convention system which allows players to pick what candidates they want. Since FDR is running for his second term, he is always the Democratic nominee in 1936. If the player chose Continue the New Deal, the Republican nominees would be the IRL ones of William Borah and Alf Landon, with Borah being a progressive Republican and Alf Landon being more of a centrist, but a New Deal Republican nonetheless. It is also worth noting that Borah does die early in 1940. I think a communist path could be started by having a choice to keep John Nance Garner as VP or switching him 4 years early with Henry Wallace. With Wallace as VP and later president possibly, you are able to go down the suspend the persecution branch. If the player chose form the conservative coalition, the Republican nominees could be Frank Knox, Frederick Seward, both of which were also in the 1936 Republican National Convention, and maybe throw in Charles Lindbergh to get towards the fascist path, no matter how ahistorical it is. Maybe make Lindbergh be Seward's vice president pick, as Seward historically resigned from politics due to health problems in 1938. According to Wikipedia, he also had a surgery in November 1936. You could possibly, in an event, pick whether he dies or not from the surgery, leading to Lindbergh becoming president. Ever since the developers made it to where focuses can be renamed/changed, the focuses for fixing the Great Depression can simply be renamed and have its contents remain the same, evening out both sides. Have the name changed from New Deal to something like Landon's New Deal, or hopefully something more creative. For other names, utilize the WPA could be replaced with Invest in Businesses, where you provide funds, civilian factories, to help get businesses rolling again and jumpstart the economy. Expand the AAA could instead be provide relief to farmers or subsidize farmers, and Fair Labor Standards Acts could be Labor Management Relations Act and steal the focus name from the current tree. I am also against having a whole election system, as that would be unnecessary and complicated. A simple event for the nominee you want for each party and an event for the election itself is all that is needed. No need to make things way too complicated. If I wanted to mess around with politics in that depth, I would just go play a Victoria game. To sum things up, I think that moving a lot of the Great Depression features to the decision screen and having a goal system to help reduce it would make early game USA play out more historically and give players more to do rather than just wait for focuses to complete. I also think that by adjusting how the president is picked would also give more flavor and a more realistic alternate history scenarios that also ties in with how they deal with the Great Depression. Thank you for taking your time to hear me ramble. I would like to also read what you think about this in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe, you know the deal, and this is Jonathan 800 signing out.